Beware of spirit. Learn to love, learn to love, learn to love. Beware of spirit. Learn to love, learn to love.
Warning. This short video is for anyone that seeks the correct knowledge of reality, and want to see the truth for themselves in black and white print. Then, this video is for you. Otherwise, if you are looking for agreeable language for pacification, which is usually achieved by double talk and/or influential speech, then, this video is not for you. This is a see for yourself, truth in black and white print, and trustworthy ancient human art and carvings left by our ancestors pertaining to our, quote-unquote, great law of the Aboriginal Indigenous Amaru-Kapana, Tamari, Amaru-Ka, Turtle Island, now called America. This video maintains a critical point of view regarding the foreign assimilation and predatory documents, such as the constitutions, treaties, trusts, etc., that serve the Roman Curia's purpose for indoctrination. This video is for those beings seeking truth to become adepts by waking up and growing up naturally. So, before going any further, a free-thinking liberated mind is required. Wholeness. It is highly recommended to view Sevan Bomar's YouTube video, titled, The Birth of the Fake Matrix. Beloved Aborigine, we must recognize and know the root cause, where it all started, so we can end it, and move forward. Who were the real colonizers? Observations, facts, untold history, and generational experience tells us that the colonizers were not just the pale Albion European hybrid experiments. There are Aboriginal beings spanning the entire Earth. On the other hand, there are indigenous from across the Atlantic of Europe and Africa, and their claimed Albion European hybrid creations. Therefore, their Albion European hybrid children had to have been taught what they know by the ones that created and fathered them. These colonizers traveled thousands of miles seeking to devour. According to the colonizers' Christian dogma Bible book, this means to seize upon, and destroy, or appropriate greedily, selfishly, or wantonly, to consume, to swallow up, to use up, to waste, to annihilate, in the name of civilization. Did they not invade, caused bloody wars, brought disease, slaughtered our people, moved us off our lands by force, stole our lands and identities in the name of empire and imperialism, force-fed us their languages, dogma, and foreign ways to assimilate us, and institutionalize us. Now their disease is spread across Mother Earth through assimilation documents that the foreign colonizers call constitutions, treaties, trusts, Bible books, for civilization, which they have so-called refined us in their way of restricted thinking and living like them, even though it took the aforementioned behaviors of barbarism to make us their so-called refined populations that they call civil. As long as the so-called civilizers do not admit some of the self-centered ideas they imposed on all humanity, admit high-minded, superior quality in knowledge and authority, that was really finite, but heralded over the rest of the Earth's naturally structured cultures. Without this acknowledgement, humanity will not be liberated to move forward independently. However, humanity will maintain on the perpetual wheel of servitude to manufactured superior knowledge and authority that the colonizers had designed for all humanity. Getting off your high horses, admitting the cause of the disease, and the immense damage and imbalance, as the continued effect, including your alleged secret knowledge, and exacting the needed beneficial action would be the first sign of recovery to the revived natural diversity of cultures, free thinking, and esoteric/exoteric expansion of awareness and growth for the benefit of all afflicted humanity on Mother Earth. Knowledge that benefits humanity should cost us nothing but the time to listen. Not one red cent. Creation did not say, in order to know thyself, you have to pay me. Fiat, Federal Reserve notes, Bitcoin, silver, gold for payment of debt. Before we begin, we must know. 1. Whenever the words, this land, is mentioned in this review, we are referring to Amarukapana, Tamari, Mayak, Turtle Island, and all other preceding designations made by the Aboriginal and Indigenous beings for this land, now called America, in all directions, south, middle, north, up, down, all the islands, air, and waters. 2. In reality, not just one, however numerous unique great laws were already established by the authority of our own sovereign Aboriginal Indigenous clans, bands, and tribes that number in the millions, if not billions, of our own people, consisting well-established and numerous federations, or leagues on this land, as opposed to the foreign assimilation constitutions, treaties, trusts, and all the rest of the associated papal document contracts, etc., that the colonizers brought with them. 3. We, the Aborigine, our ways, customs, languages, of the countless independent, self-sustaining, self-governing, clans, bands, and tribes, having multiple established federations, that we are reviving this day, were always, I repeat, always, on this land, and there were no foreign writs, called constitutions, treaties, trusts, and so on, that ever existed on this land before the colonizers invaded. We are those who were not indoctrinated, and kept our sovereign minds. We, the Aborigine, have revoked these foreign contracts, in honor of our beloved ancestors, having love from within, and for who we truly are. 4. Question. Why do today's teachers deliberately ignore our ancient laws, self-governance, but advocate the foreigners' fake constitutional, treaties, trust ideas? They deliberately fail to make their captive listeners aware that there were many unique federations of our own laws and customs on this land far before colonization. Yet, the teachers that we think are the most learned do not teach this, even though they claim that Constitution was adopted from our customs. Moreover, when they briefly mention our federation, they keep our focus only on one, the Iroquois Federation, that consisted of the few, 5 to 6 tribes that they called the civilized tribes, negating all of the other millions of beings of our clans, bands, and tribes that had multiple federation leagues that rejected the colonizers' invasion. Question. Why was the League of the Iroquois called a federation, now referred to a confederation, and they are referred to as the 5 civilized tribes? Answer. Because they were the most assimilated into the European colonizers' ways, and, for various reasons, fought alongside the colonizers against their own people. Also, it is only the great law of that particular federation that the colonizers allegedly fashioned their foreign constitution by, excluding the vast majority of opposing Aborigine clans, bands, and tribes that the colonizers must keep us distant and disconnected from.
What are, I may ask, the characters of these people? On the discovery of America by Columbus, nearly 2,000 years after the dispersion of the Hebrew tribes, the whole continent is found peopled not with a race of wild men, of cannibals, of savages, but with a race of intellectual, moral, innocent persons, divided into many hundred nations and spread over 8,000 miles of territory. I swear to your majesty, said Columbus, writing to Ferdinand and Isabella, that there is not a better people in the world than these, more affectionate or mild. He's talking about you, so-called Negro. They love their neighbors as themselves. Their language is the sweetest, the softest, and the most cheerful, for they always speak smilingly. Major Long says they are the genuine sons of nature. They have all the virtues nature can give, without the vices of civilization. They are artless, fearless, and live in constant exercise of moral and Christian virtues. Christian dodge the hijack, though they know it not. Charleville gives his testimony in their behalf. They manifest, says he, much stability in their engagements, patience in affliction, and submissive acquiescence in what they apprehend the will of Providence. In all this they display a nobleness of soul and constancy of mind, at which we rarely arrive with all our philosophy and religion. Duprat contends that they have a greater degree of prudence, faithfulness, and generosity than those who would be offended with a comparison with them. No people, says he, are more hospitable and free. Bartram, who lived many years in the Creek Nation, says, joy, contentment, love, and friendship without guilt or affectation seem inherent in them, or predominant in their vital principle, for it leaves them but with their breath. They are, says he, just honest, liberal, and hospitable to strangers, considerate and affectionate to their wives, children, and relations, frugal, persevering, charitable, and forbearing. Who are they?
Beloved, I greet you with Woh-oh-pay. This indigenous word means that we encompass the conviction that cherished divine union is not only made up of immediate blood kinfolk, but also extends to all those within our immediate clans, bands, and tribes. Brothers and sisters, now that we have heard and seen the writings of the colonizer himself, Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, the European Moor, where he describes the natural character of our people as an Aboriginal Indigenous people on this land, when he found us, without the vices of civilization. I repeat, without the vices of civilization. From time immemorial, before they invaded bringing their constitutions, treaties, and trust contracts with them, we were, and still are, innately endowed with profound and inspiring virtues that far outweigh the debased character demonstrated 24/7 on this land by the civilized colonizers, even having their paper constitutions, treaties, and trusts contract fictions, because our ancient of ancient principles that we hold within, more ancient than Egypt/Kemet. They don't have it. Because they have to conquer and rule as so-called superior civilizers in empires and imperialism, and are not capable of living with these natural principles whether they are written down and signed or not, because even after the colonizers studied us and witnessed our nature, they still invaded, displaced us off our land, and subjugated us to this day. I spit on their constitutions, treaties, trusts, and second-hand institutes of American law that they are still trying to keep us indoctrinated in. For the colonizers, their papers and material principles are unavoidable and a required necessity for them to rule. They are not here to liberate the already free people that they hold captive with their material ideas. They feel superior.
Just real quick, just want to show you, because I'm showing you images, but there's a lot of dropping in all these books. We're not reading it this today, but we're going to read a little bit. It says Louis Wetzel, right? All right, so it says the Wetzel family is remembered in the West for the courage, resolution, skill, and border warfare displayed by 4 of its members. All right, so I guess they were fighting, the ancestors. All right. It says in the hottest part of the Indian War, old Mr. Wetzel, who was a German, built his cabin some distance from the port of Wheeling. All right, so he's a German. All right. It says here, the appearance of Louis Wetzel was enough to strike terror in the common men. He was about 5 feet 10 inches high, having broad shoulders, a full breast, muscular limbs, a dark skin. A dark skin. So he's a German, but he has dark skin. So we're reminded of Benjamin Franklin telling us that, in his time, mostly all of Europe was swarthy, right? Or dark skin, right? Because, the original Germans and, Europeans were of dark skin. So this book is letting you know that this Louis Wetzel, who was a European who established himself here and it was killing our ancestors because they were fighting them, right? Trying to take their land and everything.
I tell all of them to leave our lands forever, taking their Roman Senate, House of Representatives/Congress, executive, legislative, and judicial fictions with them. This land was indeed paradise before they came. After going over a few definitions, we will now read some of the sound good, feel good indoctrinating words in the Institutes of American Law. When looking up the etymology of institutes, the word founder came up. One who establishes, one who sets up or institutes something. Founder, originator. Question: who originated the Institutes of American Law? Etymology of institute is purpose, design, an ordinance, literally thing set up. Question: was this Institutes of American Law literally set up by the colonizers, just for the true copper complexion indigenous people to assimilate and indoctrinate us? The etymology of indoctrinate: to teach, to imbue with an idea or opinion. Doctrine: the body of principles, dogmas, etc., in a religion or field of knowledge. Imbue means to saturate, also figuratively to cause to absorb, feelings, opinions. Etymology of law: to litigate, ordain. Ordain means to appoint or admit to the ministry of the church, also to decree, enact rank, series, arrangement, see order. The notion is to confer holy orders upon. Etymology of order: body of persons living under a religious discipline, position, estate, rule, regulation, religious order. There's the word estate in this meaning. The original English word reflects a medieval notion, a system of parts subject to certain uniform, established ranks or proportions. This body of principles is called the Institutes of American Law by French colonizer John Bouvier, published and entered according to their Act of Congress fiction, in the Christian calendar year of 1851. In their clerk's office of the District Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania Colony. Notice the Latin words on the cover page that reads, in societate civile, aut lex aut vis valet. Becon translates as, in civil society, law, or force prevails. Becon. The following French words, c'est qui, ou bien classe, est moyodisu, duval, translates as, the good thing is class, as in rank, is a half-known, sharing one parent. Duval. Question: so, what is the Institutes of American Law? Answer: according to the etymology of these very important words, it is the purpose, design, and guide for the ministering front men to teach and instill their rule in a way to cause a saturating absorption of this dogmatic body of principles, by order of, and under the religious discipline of, the Roman Curia. These institutes impose a system of parts, subject to uniform rules, regulations, establish ranks, or proportions, as precedents, in accord with the secret Treaty of Verona, Unum Sanctum, and all subsequent papal decrees. The subjects of these European institutes are the true Aboriginal Indigenous Americans. Hence, Institutes of American Law, no different than Christian black codes, keeps us from being liberated like we were before they came. The Latin and French verbiage is telling us that the bottom of social scale is the ruled, not the rulers, where their civil society, their law, and their force prevails over all. Moreover, the colonizers are the single parent of this patriarchal chief, or head fiction rulership in their civilization fiction. Just like colonialism is not an event, but an institution, this document is a guide, or the ordinances instituted against the true Americans to stay indoctrinated, and not reach for their own indigenous, pre-colonial systems of improvement and refinement of the mind in our own ways. To see this truth, the teachers cannot teach without referring to Bible book dogma. Occasionally, the Quran. They will not teach in depth about our true ancient cultures, our spirituality and Amaru Kapana, and they speak about who or what is superior, overriding who we really are, and our liberty to exercise our own indigenous cultures, languages, oral traditions, and Woh-oh-pay, meaning our own ancient of ancient law. Read through this document, Institutes of American Law. It reads good, sounds good, and noble. However, think with a liberated mind. It is an institute, instituted by foreigners who have already displaced us off our land, in occupation of our land, are dominating the people, have stolen our identities, as Amarucans. The Institutes of American Law is fine and good to be instituted somewhere else. We don't want it, no matter how good it reads. It subjugates the Aboriginal Indigenous Americans. We are not stopping the intruders from going and taking it, to be practiced somewhere else in their own lands. It is not that difficult to comprehend. We have our own Woh-oh-pay. If the advocates of these institutes are so principled, then, stop trying to dominate, and blocking our liberty as Aboriginal Indigenous people on our own land to revive our own pre-colonial systems of improvement, and refinement of our own minds in our own ways.
Alright, now we're in this book. I've gone over this book. We read it in my Huguenots video, read a good amount of it. Really good info in the Huguenots video. Again, I recommend you guys to go watch my Huguenot video if you haven't, especially, I mean, it's a 4 or 5 hour video, but it's a lot of good info. I read a lot of things from this book and other information, but we're going to just skim through this book. I haven't read all of it in this book, so I'm going to read it now. It's called and this is a genealogical history. Jews and Muslims in British colonial America. Jews and Muslims in British colonial America. You see these two symbols right here, and then you see the tree signifying a family tree, a branch of genealogy, and you can interpret it however you want. This is by Elizabeth Hirschman and Donald Yates. Very good, informative book, very scholarly, a lot of sources to verify the information they're saying. All right, we're right in the preface of this book. Second paragraph, just want to read here. It says, in this work, we present a series of colonial documents, contemporary first-hand accounts, records, portraits, family genealogies, and ethnic DNA test results, which fundamentally challenge the national storyline depicting America's first settlers as white, British, and Christian. All right? They weren't white or British or Christians. Alright, you guys ready? We postulate that many of the initial colonists were of Sephardic, Jewish, and Muslim Moorish ancestry. Alright, they didn't even taught this, to us in history. They made us think of the, like this George Washington looking kind of people, But this is the truth right here. Alright, that's why I highlighted it. Guys, keep that in your mind. Alright, correlating with everything we're learning, right? Usually arriving as crypto Jews with their religious adherents disguised as crypto Muslims. Alright? Disguised as crypto Muslims. Moors. These immigrants served in prominent economic and political, financial, and social positions in all of the original colonies. Alright, you see, it's deep. Talking about who cares about this, who cares about hugging, who cares about these ain't our people. Hey man, you never know what's in your genealogy or ancestry. The evidence in support of this radical new narrative begins with an examination of the British colonial companies organized in England to bring settlers to North America and exploit the natural riches believed to be there. Alright, so now if you've been following me for a while, if you watch some of my Swart to Europe videos, my Huguenot video, you know, even before that, South Carolina video, you guys kind of already know I have a background. You know, Nations of the World video, have a background where these Sephardic Jews are coming from, what's their story, how did they become British.
Brothers and sisters, being very careful, investigating, and questioning everything is encouraged. The times are critical. In order to be duped into staying the course of perpetual servitude instead of total liberation, there will be unreal and very tempting offers to you as incentives for accepting the garbage that will be read to you shortly. In the meantime, some of our strongest Aboriginal Indigenous population will be betrayed, deceived, and sent to jail, prison, or worse, while the informant sycophants continue this false teaching while sitting comfortably in front of YouTube or some other social media, collecting the fiat or private Federal Reserve notes that they speak so badly of. Now, to begin. Law in the foreign Euro-centered mindset of the ones teaching this propaganda is supposed to mean land, air, and water. This notion correlates to the 1213 Treaty of Verona, the 1302 Unum Sanctum Papal Bull, and the 1494 Treaty of Tordesillas, Spain, that the thieves falsely claimed dominion over the land, air, and water west of Europe, where between the Roman Curia's Vatican, the Portuguese, and the Spanish monarchs, among themselves. Brothers and sisters, the correct knowledge of reality tells us that the colonizer's law is indeed a political act of government fiction operations and religious dogma crusades. The foreigners are counting on the Aboriginal Indigenous people of this land to be fully indoctrinated and assimilated in order for their conquest to be fulfilled. This will not happen.
Institutes of American Law. Page 1. Preliminary Book. Part 1, of Laws in General. Number 1. Man is a social being, fond of the company of his fellows, and always disposed to live with others. It is thus that families, tribes and nations are formed. Men render to, and receive mutual benefits and assistance from each other. But in such societies there must constantly arise causes of differences among the several members, and these must be adjusted or settled, either by the parties themselves, or by some power which is superior to them. Their rights must also be regulated, so that the parties may know what each one is entitled. This is done by an actual or presumed agreement of all the members of the society, state, or nation, by the establishment of certain rules, which acquire the name of laws. The knowledge of these laws, or the science by which they are understood, is called jurisprudence.
Assessment and comment. The first paragraph, being the foundation of this foreign French Institutes of American Law, is very impressive considering all the feuding and bloodshed in service of their master pope and monarchs that the European French produced with their Portuguese, Spaniard, and African friends in committing crimes of slavery and genocide to intrude while acting, quote-unquote, superior to and occupying our lands. The words about man being social beings and living together was selected perfectly and certainly attracts the interest, or draws the attention of anyone who innately has, and already exercise, discretion, foresight, and wise judgment. This writing certainly has a baiting, or luring effect on any reader into agreement with it, until one arrives at the two resolution methods for social beings in dispute. First, the technical term, parties, is European French fictional legal speech, which is foreign to our indigenous natural concepts. However, settling disputes among ourselves is agreeable, and was a beneficial function exercised by our people, all along, far before the colonizers arrived. This document's second resolution for settlement of disagreements by, quote, some power which is superior to them, end quote, is certainly foreign to our indigenous natural traditions, especially where it reads, quote, their rights must also be regulated, so that the parties may know what each one is entitled, end quote, thinking that it refers to what the law entitles. Keep in mind, this law is foreign, and by aliens that have imposed their ways on us. A new level of servitude/slavery. Regardless, if their law is based on ancient principles of another kind, their concept of mechanical technical rights, wherein they have multiple definitions for the same doggone thing, the word right, in the European Law Dictionary, means abstract justice, ethical correctness, or consonance, a pleasing agreement among artificial persons, with the rules of law, or the principles of morals. See Black's Law Dictionary, revised 4th ed., page 1486. Questions. What is abstract justice? Whose agreement of rules of law and principles of morals are they speaking of? Answer. It's the Roman Curia's Catholic good/bad programming. The Aboriginal Indigenous were taking care of ourselves and settling our disputes eons before colonization. This Institutes of American law was forcefully imposed on us, and still being shoved down our throats like it's noble and beneficial when it keeps us subjugated by some alleged, quote-unquote, power which is superior to them, which is the hijack and foreign colonial mentality, in stark contrast to our own indigenous thought. Colonizers rationalize their ugly, evil wickedness to justify their narrow-minded government and dogma crusades, in the name of their civilization by regulation fiction, of whole populations of indigenous people that are being indoctrinated to think like them, forcefully. Their law is fine for them, in their own lands. Living together and settling disputes among ourselves is nothing new to Aboriginal Indigenous thought. This word, superior, to the European writers of this writ/legal document, means one who has the right to command, one who holds a superior rank, belonging to a higher grade, possessing larger power, entitled to command, influence, or control over another. See Black's Law Dictionary, revised 4th edition, page 1606. A position situated above, or over, higher in rank or dignity. Example, a person of the class, as opposed to a boot-cleaning boy. Please comprehend, our clans, tribes, and federations have our own unique traditions, best expressed by Jack Forbes. Paraphrasing. The cosmic visions of indigenous peoples are significantly diverse. Each tribe and community has its own unique traditions. Still, several characteristics stand out. First, it is common to envision the creative process of the universe as a form of thought or mental process. Second, it is common to have a source of creation that is plural, either because several entities participate in creation, or because the process as it unfolds includes many sacred actors stemming from a first principle, e.g., father/mother, or grandfather/grandmother. Third, the agents of creation are seldom pictured as human, but are depicted instead as Wakon, the Great Mystery, the supernatural forces that permeates the universe. Wakanda, or animal-like spirit, for example, coyote, raven, great white hare, etc., or as forces of nature, such as wind/breath. The Lakota medicine man, Lame Deer, says that the Great Spirit is not like a human being. It is a power. That power could be in a cup of coffee. The Great Spirit is no old man with a beard. The concept perhaps resembles the Elohim of the Jewish Genesis, the plural form of Eloi, usually mistranslated as God, as though it were singular. Perhaps the most important aspect of indigenous cosmic visions is the conception of creation as a living process, resulting in a living universe in which a kinship exists between all things. Therefore, the colonizers' false sense of superiority and entitlement, and their science to rationalize exploitation of resources, to manu, or steal living spaces, and the sacred spaces for the non-living, found in the lands of the Aborigine, by the foreign laws without permission or approval from all concerned, does not exist in indigenous thought, regardless whether their alien laws are based on alleged ancient principles or not. Therefore, the colonizing authors of this Institutes of American Law do not respect the fact and truth of our own unique and diverse traditions, and much rather falsely act superior to and impose their limited materialistic and scientific ideas on everyone on Earth, not realizing they are on a road to self-destruction. We will now touch on a few significant principles this Institutes of American Law have on slavery.
Now back to Institutes of American Law. Chapter 1. Of those born in the country. Number 40. Pages 16 and 17. The natives, or persons born within the jurisdiction of the United States, in any state or territory, have not all the same rights, some being citizens, and others not, some having all their civil rights, and others being deprived of them. First, white persons, so born, are, in general, citizens of the United States, unless they have lost that right. By white person is meant one who is not of the Indian or African race unmixed, but it is not easy to say what shade of color or mixture will deprive a man of the quality of being white, or will entitle him to that appellation. Secondly, the Aborigines or persons of the Indian race are not in general citizens of the United States, and can exert no political rights. Thirdly, Negroes or descendants of the African race, in general, possess no political power whatever. They cannot vote or hold office, and many of them are deprived even of their civil rights, being holden in a state of slavery.
Wow. Need there be anything further said about the so-called principled Institutes of American Law? Also, according to the Institutes of American Law, white status is based on the Caucasian race. Hold up. Now, on the books, it's been confirmed that these foreign European Caucasian colonizers with their so-called founding fathers and offspring have rights under their system which we were led to think included us, since after all, they are on our land. What in the world gave us the wild idea that invaders set up institutions that were beneficial for the people they stole the land from? Question to the listener. Do you have faith in the Institutes of American Law? There is a paper available on the internet by an Albion European, titled, History of the U.S. Constitution, Must Read, No Name for Protection. The PDF document inside is titled, The Matrix, and the U.S. Constitution, by, No Name, Hidden for His Safety. Page 2 of this PDF reads in part, The motive of our founding fathers was totally self-centered. It was their personal greed that inspired them to accept the task of writing the Constitution of the United States, and not patriotism. In actuality, a corporation, a legal fiction that existed well before the Revolutionary War. See United States Supreme Court case, Republica vs. Sween, 1 Dallas 43 and 28 U.S.C. 3002, 15. The Constitution of the United States was written in secret by the Founding Fathers, and was never presented to the colonists for a vote. Well, it wasn't presented for a vote because the Constitution wasn't created for we the people. It was created by and for the Founding Fathers, their family, heirs, and their posterity. The Constitution is a business plan, and any reference contained within it that appears to be the safeguard of the right is there because none of the Founding Fathers trusted each other. The safeguards were intended to prevent any one, or group of them, from cutting out the others, proving that there's no honor among thieves.
Number 75. The governments of the several states are formed very much upon the model of the general government. They are all of a republican form. The Constitution of the United States provides that the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion, and on application of the legislature, or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, against domestic violence.
Brothers and sisters, those that taught us that a republican form of government was good for the Aboriginal Indigenous, was either mistaken, or lied to us. A republican is anyone belonging to a republic. Republican form of government was never good, nor helped the Aboriginal people, as it reads in number 75. The so-called Founding Fathers created the Constitution business plan for themselves, their families, heirs, and their posterity, and it protects themselves in every state/colony from any uprising, or attempted uprising, of the Aborigine on our own land, to get our land restored to us. Hence, against domestic violence. Genius of the People book is a timely account of the birth of America's national government fiction during the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Here are a couple of excerpts. Page 1. Quote, 200 years ago, in May of 1787, several dozen delegates, all of them men, all of them white, all members in good standing of the American political establishment, all of them men of property, slave owners, plantation owners, gentlemen farmers, businessmen, lawyers, bankers, and shippers, gathered at the State House in Philadelphia, where, in the next several months, they wrote the Constitution of the United States of America, which has served as the foundation of the country ever since. End quote. Really, served the corporation. And the United States was never valid. And its illegitimacy did not start in 1861 because of leave without day, because it was never legitimate. Page 273. The Constitution's Forgotten People. Richard B. Morris, an author and former history professor at Columbia University in New York, states in a 1987 symposium presentation that the Constitution and the process that created it were notable for the America's people left out. The original Constitution, we now recognize, was basically a document of governance for free, white, propertied adult males, free from dependence upon others. Left out of its text, or dealt with ambiguously, were the forgotten people, those bound to servitude, white or black. Slavery was implicitly, rather than overtly, recognized. Debtors, paupers, Indians, and women, most of whom were not considered a part of the political constituency. True, the Founding Fathers held diverse views on the score of blacks, Indians, and women, but they managed to sidestep a direct confrontation on each of these forgotten people, in numbers, a majority of the nation's inhabitants in 1787. Keep in mind, this system is foreign, we are not citizens in their system, and we don't vote for foreigners to control our lives. The etymology of Commonwealth. Specifically, state with a republican or democratic form of government. any body of persons united by some common interest. Applied specifically to the government of England in the period 1649 to 1660, and later to self-governing former colonies under the British Crown, 1917. In the U.S., it forms a part of the official name of Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, Virginia, Kentucky, and Puerto Rico colonies. Keep in mind, we are not artificial persons. Thus, Commonwealth is British commerce.
Page 57 and 58. Book 1. Of Persons. Title I. Of Natural Persons. Part 1. Of Natural and Artificial Persons. In part, number 136. Persons are divided into natural and artificial. A slave, though a man, is in general considered not as a person, but a thing. For some purposes he is considered a person. Footnote A. reads. Court Case, State vs. Thackum, 1 Bay, R. 358. In the fourth article of the Constitution of the United States, the word person is used in the sense of man. No person held to labor evidently refers to slaves. Footnote E. reads. Caput, signified simply a state of liberty, of citizenship, and of family. The slave, who was deprived of all state, was said to have no head, caput non habere. A Dictionary of Greek and Roman Antiquities, John Murray, London, 1875. Caput, the head. The term head is often used by the Roman writers as equivalent to person, or human being. Caput is also used to express a man's civil condition, and the persons who are registered in the tables of the censor are spoken of as capita, sometimes with the addition of the word civium, and sometimes not. Thus to be registered in the census was the same thing as caput habere, and a slave and a filius familias, in this sense of the word, were said to have no caput. Footnote A reads in part. The word person, in its primitive and natural sense, signifies the mask with which actors, who played dramatic pieces in Rome and Greece, covered their heads. These pieces were played in public places, and afterward in such vast amphitheaters, that it was impossible for a man to make himself heard by all the spectators. Recourse was had to art. The head of each actor was enveloped with a mask, the figure of which represented the part he was to play, and it was so contrived that the opening for the emission of his voice made the sounds clearer, and more resounding, vox personabat, whence the name persona was given to the instrument or mask which facilitated the resounding of his voice. It is in this last sense of personage, or of the part which an individual plays, that the word persona is employed in jurisprudence, in opposition to the word man, homo.
Brothers and sisters, in this Foreign Institutes of American Law where it reads, quote, word persona is employed in jurisprudence in opposition to the word man, homo, end quote. This means that a person in society is not man, like in man, woman, child. Also, quote, a slave, though a man, is in general considered not as a person, but a thing, end quote. We all know that a slave is a person who is the chattel or property of another, and slaves are sold into slavery by conquering peoples, such as the conquering authors of this Institutes of American Law by consent of the Aborigine and Indigenous to this land mentally accepting this as pertaining to them. Question. Would anyone want to be under, or their loved ones under the yoke of this so-called jurisprudence based on unproven, ancient principles? We cannot stress this enough, as mothers, fathers, grandmothers, grandfathers, and great-grands that we must be aware and discerning enough to not be influenced by the illusionists that teach what they say is good or beneficial by appearances, such as this foreign law, no matter who they are. Because in reality they will not sway off their master's path for them to maintain the colonist-induced mental slavery of the people by promoting and teaching their foreign and subjugating colonial law as good, such as this foreign institutionalized American law, their constitution, business plans, and untrustworthy trusts, etc., when what they are teaching is certainly not beneficial, and self-evident that it is not beneficial in the writings/writ itself. Also, Warn your loved ones not to fall trapped, because times are critical where the real tricksters are being exposed, and truth is being revealed. So much so, that the deceivers will deflect, and start insinuating, or covertly, and subtly, introducing into the minds and hearts of their audience that the real liberators of the people are so-called COINTELPRO operatives aimed at surveilling, infiltrating, and discrediting them, when in fact, and seen by their own deeds, or by their own fruit, that these teachers are the real operatives, and as missionaries for the colonizers themselves, they will not sway, encouraging the Aborigine to engage in what will land them in the colonizer's jail, or prison, which is exactly the goal. Moreover, those that are stuck in jail, and or prison, are just collateral damage to them as they sit back, because these same teachers will not be coming for them.
Page 59, number 144. 1. In part, it is a question as to his state, which settles whether a man is a freeman or a slave, a citizen or an alien, because if he is free, and a citizen, he is qualified to render service to his country in all public stations or offices. If, on the contrary, he is a slave or an alien, he is excluded by both of these.
This is really stupid to be based on so-called ancient principles. Read it again for yourself. Quote, if he is free and a citizen, he is qualified to render service to his country. End quote. A citizen is not free because the etymology of service is the condition of a slave, servitude, also slaves collectively, act of serving, occupation of an attendant servant, a state of being bound to undertake tasks for someone, or at someone's direction. Therefore, a free man as a citizen is the same as a slave or alien. This is deception at its best. The unsuspecting think they are free in this colonial system as a citizen when they are not. The way to be free is by using your sovereign mind where absolutely no one external to yourself can take away or take control over it. Know who you are within, and not what someone tells you or calls you. Be yourself, Aboriginal and Indigenous on this land. Not subject, not resident, not domestic, and not a citizen/person/subject of any fiction. The conquering authors of this colonial law and jurisprudence really have a preoccupation with servitude, because most of what colonization is about is commerce, as in their Constitution for the United States of America Business Plan, in which Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3 of the Constitution for the United States of America gives Congress the power to regulate commerce. This constitutes citizenship as a necessary part.
Numbers 165 and 166. States does not sanction or establish slavery. The state governments, where that institution exists, have authorized it by law, for without such authority it has no existence whatever. Number 167. It is a maxim of law, that the child follows the condition of the mother. Latin words. Pertus sequitur ventram. Translates as, delivery follows pregnancy. The child of a female slave is therefore a slave, whoever may have been its father. But the child of a female slave, born in a free state where slavery is not recognized by law, is free.
Brothers and sisters, here is more of the same deception and double talk. This garbage law is saying that the state/colony does not allow slavery, but slavery exists in states/colonies by law. Duh. All this means is that slavery exists. Remember, it's all about commerce. I guess the authors of this law and jurisprudence think that all people reading this nonsense fell 2 stories down, landing on their heads. For real. All Aboriginal Indigenous are naturally free when we manifest on this earth plane, which is a part of knowing self, no matter what the colonizers dictate. Now, when trying to identify with a state, nationality, government, etc. fiction as citizen/person fictions, even though fiction. This commercial slavery in the state/colonies and mother/child slave condition crap applies to that being only because they have been deceived, lied to, and they think it's real. So let's not let these tricksters mislead our sovereign mind or judgment of reality.
Let's finish this part up. Check out numbers 168, 170, 236, 502, 596, and 604. They are all about rules for captive beings, that this institutes of American law and jurisprudence have enslaved. Page 494 is about not being able to collect financially when their slaves are thrown overboard their ships. So, read and learn these for yourselves. Otherwise, the video will run too long. Regarding subtitles, 6, of white and colored persons. It reads, number 171. A white person is one who is of the Caucasian race, without any mixture of African or Aboriginal blood, or at most not a fourth part of such blood. In the southern states, when a question as to the quantity of African blood in a person arises, it is left to the jury to find it as a matter of fact. The Act of Congress which authorizes the naturalization of aliens, confines the description of such aliens to free white persons. And many of the state constitutions require, as one of the qualities of a citizen or elector, that he shall be white. A rule has been adopted in the slave states that color is presumption of slavery, but in the free states this rule would probably be reversed, because there the presumption is that all men are free, and he who would rebut the presumption must establish the contrary fact. Need I say any more? Is the Constitution, the institutionalized colonialism, and institutes of American law beneficial to the Aboriginal Indigenous people of this land, or any people for that matter, or only beneficial to the colonizing invaders that still in occupation of Amaru-Kapana, now anglicized as America? After seeing and analyzing what we have read in black and white print, we all know the answer to that question.
Brothers and sisters, the advocate teachers of foreign constitutions, treaties, trusts, etc., according to their masters' papal bulls and treaties, use these institutes that the colonizers set up after they invaded the land, against the true peoples of this land. You will hear them say that this is about the white man, or blaming the white man. Correction. First, white man is fiction, and second, this is about all foreign colonizers that indoctrinate our Aboriginal Indigenous people of this land, with outright lies, mixed with a little truth as bait. It's about foreigners enforcing their foreign, so-called laws and ideas against the Aborigine under the ruse of civilization. Like, nobody else on earth lived morally, or ethical lives besides themselves, when we never needed their foreign law of nations fiction, their so-called international law fiction, nor the Jesus and Bible book dogma fiction, as a crutch. All based on supposed ancient principles. Question. What makes these wannabe praiseworthy people think that just because they supposedly teach ancient principles, this means these principles are for everyone on Mother Earth? Ancient principles, good or bad, does not mean they were all beneficial. Otherwise, the perceived ancient principles of the supposedly mothers and fathers of civilization would not have resulted in the depraved consciousness witnessed today. Question. Did the colonizing and indoctrinating institutes of American law show good principles when much of its subject matter was the imposition, institution, and regulation of human servitude, aka slavery? Also, privileged free white persons, aka Caucasians? In our Lakota Sioux Indigenous Siouan language, we have our own Lilawashte, Woh-oh-pay, meaning fair, beneficial, great law, as well as our own traditions, cultures, and just everyday natural living without low-level politics, fighting, signing and autographing papers to make agreements, since the mind hunter's spoken word, nor written word, is their bond. We don't need, or want the foreign colonizers' so-called laws, nor their way of artificial life, they call civilized. We have our own, higher and expanding natural consciousness that the colonizers will never comprehend, while remaining on their own conformity wheel, forever teaching the same old material things, for many, many years, that turn into centuries, and then lifetimes, forever being passed on to their offspring that are taught to stay on the wheel, instead of breaking the repetitious cycle. Anyhow, since the Iroquois Federation is the most known, we will review it, since it was just a small part of our own vast and diverse cultures as a whole. Out of many, many clans, bands, and tribes numbering in the millions of self-governed, we established many federations. A federation is just a union of tribes by agreement. Our leagues were unwritten because our word is bond, as opposed to the foreign assimilation constitutions, treaties, trusts, and all the rest of the associated papal document contracts, etc., that the colonizers brought with them. Our own self-governance begins with the clan. A clan is an immediate kindred unit of Aboriginal Indigenous beings, holding land in common, and having chieftains. Another level of self-governance is a band. A band is groups of clans of local Aborigine, joined together, that gather together to have meetings, to learn technologies to build, to grow food, gather food in various ways and harvest, to teach our children wisdom, esoterically, to teach each other, defense. Used wood, and the sun to fuel the fireplaces, cooking areas, and for the entire band's fireside meetings under the stars, where oral traditions and wisdom is passed on to us by our elders and young alike. There were no foreigners, nor their constitutions, treaties, trusts, foreign Bible books, no colonization. An even expanded level of self-governance in bands is the tribe. Many bands formed in the hundreds into tribes, and there were hundreds, if not thousands of tribes, because our populations were in the millions, thriving near one another on vast areas of land and fresh-flowing waters. The bands kept their own language of communication. Also, the tribes that formed learned the same languages, or dialects of our neighbors. We had a unified form of esoteric inner knowledge of the Woh-oh-pay, the Great Spirit, that permeates all of the universes, and the various guardian ancestor spirits, and exoteric external observances, wise women, wise men, ceremonies, music, dancing, and customs. We had our own ways of trade, trading centers, writing, and communication. We had our own various architectural means of creativity, design, and building. We did not all just live in teepees. The women held very important positions in everyday natural living. There are also women as the highest guiding chiefs of wisdom and defense. Some tribes had these positions as permanent for both women and men. Many had more than one chief, such as, for peacetime chief, shaman chief, and brave warrior chiefs, etc., even though some tribes did not involve themselves in war. In some tribes, but not all, a chief had to be from a certain kindred clan. Brothers and sisters, another even greater expanse of our self-governance, was the Federation of Aboriginal Indigenous Tribes. Remember this, and remember good. Some clans remained independent of bands, tribes, and federations, freely on Mother Earth. Our self-governance extended countless ages before colonization, and continuing to this day, as we move forward, regardless of the obstacles. The most famous was the Iroquois Federation of Tribes that once occupied Upper New York State/colony. From east to west, the tribes included the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca. Under the leadership of Hiawatha and Deconoida, these tribes organized the famous 5 civilized tribes. They were called civilized because they became the most colonized, indoctrinated, and assimilated Christianized people out of all the thousands of North American tribes. In 1722, the Tuscarora people of North Carolina joined the League, which then became the 6 Civilized Tribes, or People of the Iroquois, or Haudenosaunee. Longhouse. Unfortunately, the Federation became a Confederation. Though never proven, it is said that the United States of America corporate structure/constitution might have been patterned after the Iroquois Federation. Again, never proven. However, the majority of the millions of our indigenous clans, bands, and tribes kept the old way that was concealed from the colonizing Albion Europeans, and kept from our own people that were Christianized. Question. What were some of our own ways? Example. In Lakota Siouan language, it's called Ma-in, or Pays Jada, or medicine. The Algonquins, Miduli Win, or the Grand Medicine Society, is the secretive spirituality of some of the indigenous of the Northeast regions. We never needed vaccines of the colonizers, and still don't. Disease was imported by the colonizers. We had timely cosmic, or seasonal ceremonies, such as our sun dance, moon dance, thunder dance, designed to honor nature, not destroy it. We honored our loved ones in the afterlife. We preserve all rituals of good fortune and health, obtained for women. Each tribe sent a given number of its chiefs to the Great Federation Council. The language of the Iroquois belonged to a large language family, the Iroquoian. Nonetheless, the Iroquois were great fighters. After colonization, they obtained firearms from the Dutch in the early 1600s, and soon conquered all the indigenous people from the St. Lawrence River that connects the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean to Tennessee Colony, and from Maine to Michigan colonies. They controlled the fur trade in the territory, and boat travel on the Great Lakes. Some colonial historians say that if the French had been able to make allies of the Iroquois, they might have won the French and Indian Wars, and the United States might have become French. Instead, as you can see, United States/colonies is English, as in British. The Iroquois, under such leaders as Joseph Brant, sided with the British, traders of their own people. Later, the League broke up over the question of whether to join the British, or the pale-face British who were falsely calling themselves Americans in the Revolutionary War. In the Iroquois Federation of Tribes, all except the Oneida and Tuscarora stayed with the old way. The Cayuga, Mohawk Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca took the side of the colonizing British. After the war, General John Sullivan, under George Washington's orders, took revenge by destroying the villages of the Oneida and Tuscarora tribes that stayed loyal to their own people. Most of the Cayuga and Mohawk, and some of the Tusker were moved to colonial reservations in Canada. The Oneida joined their indigenous Winnebago brothers and sisters at the Wisconsin colony, and a few indigenous Seneca moved to Pennsylvania and Oklahoma colonies. The Onondaga and most of the Seneca and Tuscarora remained on the colonizers' 5 reservations in New York State/colony. The present headquarters of the Iroquois Confederacy is located at Onondaga Reservation, south of Syracuse, New York Colony. In any case, except for the few assimilated of the Iroquois Federation of Tribes, we did not have forced involuntary servitude, spoken in our own Siouan language. We had Woh-oh-pay and Algonquins. Adanadosha means cooperative labor. Also see the World Book Encyclopedia, 1917. I Volume 10, page 366. Brothers and sisters, we must learn our true selves. Learn your own culture from your own ancestors, and abandon the colonizers' dead culture to normalize slavery and conformity to artificialness, and empty allegiance to a piece of cloth called a flag, when we are free to experience life's possibilities with the help of our inner master and beloved ancestors, as guides that show us wonders, that enable greater levels of possibilities, that just do not exist in nationality fictions, paper constitution fictions, and trust fictions regurgitated from external ideas, and imposed on free-thinking and conscious people, where the propagators of these self-satisfying ideas use the science of alchemy in subtle and deceptive ways, as an art, to bend the captive minds of their listeners to their own egotistic perceptions of conquest, the best and strongest empires, colonialism, imperialism. We must learn our true selves, the deeper sense of perception of what Turtle Island is. Why our ancestors call Mother Earth Turtle Island, not only because of her strength, patience, stability, longevity, adaptability, protective, nurturing, dependability, and that we must trust nature over the propagandists, but also because all of the animals of creation have specific energies and spirits that mean more than just what some unenlightened would say, quote-unquote, art of breathing. Across all of our ancient and true present cultures, man and animal have specific energies that are eternal throughout the universe and make up the universes. We must learn our true selves. Why this wonderful meaningful word, Wakanda, was taken from this part of Mother Earth as bait. Then the operators of global media planted that energy as a mythical city of the Africa fiction where that energy is lacking, across the Atlantic Ocean, in order to move us, the Aboriginal Indigenous people from our places of solar returns right here, to influence us to move over there, in order that our true home place here can remain occupied by colonizing people caught in the lower levels, bottom feeders, starved for attention and material things, just telling stories. The wonderful word, in our own indigenous tongue, Wa-kan-da, is sacred, is the great spirit that was perceived and passed on to us, in this part of the whole of Mother Earth land, Turtle Island.